Hello. We're here today to talk about gender. With Brexit looming, 2020 did not go as anyone predicted, with the outbreak and spread of the coronavirus. This had global implications, as well as more localised lockdowns across Scotland, giving everyone time to think and reflect. The murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement had massive implications, sparking protests and conversations around the world. Sticking across the pond, Joe Biden won this presidential election, with Kamala Harris being elected as the first female vice president of the United States, and trans people being included in the White House administration for the first time in history. Media personalities are becoming more open about their own gender identities and experiences, with Kim Petras being the world's first openly trans pop star, Sam Smith identifying as non-binary amid a wave of controversy and backlash, and Laverne Cox has long been an advocate for trans women and gender awareness. With so many different questions and complex issues surrounding gender, we spoke to 4 Scottish students, each with a different gender identity, to try and answer some of those questions in an accessible way. This is their stories in their own words. This is The Lockdown on Gender.
My name is Kelly and I am a cis woman.
I am Charlie. I identify as genderqueer and I use they them pronouns.
Hi, I'm Cameron Henshwood. I identify as non-binary and I use they them pronouns.
My name is Callum and I am a cis man. I use he, him pronouns.
Honestly, I had a bit of a struggle with pronouns because for a while, I identified as just a trans man, so I used just he, him. And then I discovered they, them, and they suited me a bit better.
I use she, her pronouns. What this means to me is just something I have always done. I've never really thought about it. From childhood, it is how I've been referred to, and it's what I'm comfortable with.
I've always used they, them. I feel like that just fits better with who I am.
I use male pronouns. Gay men typically use female pronouns affectionately, kind of speaking of their reverence of women.
I'm not really a boy. I'm not really a girl. I'm either somewhere in between or neither at all.
So if someone left their umbrella and you didn't know who it belonged to, you'd be like, oh, someone left their umbrella. I wonder if they'll come back for it. I spent a long time sort of looking at my gender. For a long time, I identified as gender fluid. I've identified as non-binary, and none of them have quite fit with who I am, I guess.
When I was a kid, I would probably get referred to as a tomboy a little bit because most of my friends were boys. I hung out mostly with the boys, and I wore just like jeans and t-shirts kind of girl. I was never really massively into a lot of girly stuff.
I think it came out last February. And honestly, it was really hard because my parents didn't take it too well, because my parents are from a different generation, and being trans and being gay and stuff wasn't as much of a thing. Like, you still use slurs and attack people for being gay in their generation, so for their child to come out and say, oh yeah, I'm non-binary, was a bit of a shock to the system.
I was always in a really sort of accepting environment. You know, I did drama, I did theatre, and that's usually by nature a pretty open environment. I was in a youth theatre that was a lot of the participants were queer to some extent, were involved in the LGBT community.
I've spent a long time thinking about gender. I spent most of my life being told that I was feminine, and being called names because I was, not interested in sports.
So it took them a bit to get used to it, but they're really good with it now, which is nice because it means I can talk a lot more openly about my journey and what I'm going through, and like taking hormones and surgeries and gender appointments and everything else that comes between, because there's a lot.
Just express yourself the way you want to express yourself, and surely everything will just be fine. If you want to wear a dress, wear a dress. If you want to wear trousers or dungarees, wear trousers and dungarees. Why do we need to label these as girl clothes and boy clothes? Why can't they just be clothes? They're bits of fabric.
All I can think of is one of the first moments of euphoria I ever had. And euphoria is when someone uses the correct pronouns or the correct name, or just does something gender affirming to make you feel a lot better about yourself, or better about your gender, more secure in your gender. And I think one of the first times I had that was when I'd met up with my now boyfriend for the first time. And I was only kind of out to them a time, and he called me he, and he'd done so much research without me asking him to, or without me mentioning it. And he knew.
And I think it's important people know the difference between sexuality and gender. They're very different things.
But it's nice to be able to talk to family about it, and to be able to be a lot more open about it than I ever expected to be able to be. Because first coming out was horrendous, and it caused a lot of trauma and a lot of therapy. And it was a really awful experience for a very long time. But just recently, it's became not as bad, and my parents have become a lot more understanding. And honestly, I put a lot of that down to lockdown, because we were trapped in this tight space for a while, and we didn't really have anywhere else to go. And because I still had appointments, and I still had hormones, and I still had things to do, I kind of couldn't avoid talking to them about it.
And I went through about 2 full years of college, you know, of people thinking I was a cis girl, which I'm not. And yeah, I eventually came out again to like everyone in my life over Instagram of all things. Over lockdown, it was probably about 2 months ago now. I just posted on my Instagram.
During lockdown, I spent a lot of time, as I'm sure many people did, on social media, and I am part of a cat appreciation group. It's like a closed group. We get together and talk about cats. It's pretty nerdy as it sounds. And there was one day I was just scrolling through, and there was a post from one of the members of the group asking if anyone would like to donate to their GoFundMe page for their name change. They're non-binary, and they found their name to be something that made them or gave them gender dysphoria over it. And we're seeking some money to help them do this, because the state that they lived in the US, it costs $300 to change your name. So I just thought, why not?
And I think as well, over lockdown, obviously it's text conversations we're having now, and seeing she and seeing her written down all the time, it just felt wrong.
I spent lockdown in isolation, thinking about gender and having lots of conversations about it. Some of the most amusing and heartwarming conversations have actually been with the older generation.
And speaking of older generations, my nana's been really lovely about me going through things, because we like socially distanced and went to see her over lockdown to make sure she was okay and that she was coping all right with everything, because we hadn't been going to see her. Because normally without lockdown we go and see her like every Sunday, and obviously we can't really go and see her. So we socially distanced seeing her, standing outside her doorway. And just I remember commenting like just on something, I think is that my voice had went a little deeper, or I had leg hair or something. And she was like, "Oh, is that your medicine working?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is. And it's really nice that you noticed, because no one else has commented on it. But I'm really proud of it, and you've noticed, and you've told me you've noticed," which is great.
I guess I kind of have lockdown to thank for giving me the push to come out again. Because if it wasn't for lockdown, and if it wasn't for having to have every conversation I've had over Messenger, I wouldn't have felt that uncomfortableness with she, her again. I wouldn't have felt that. So I would have just kept presenting this cis girl that isn't me. If you were to use the wrong pronoun for someone and then someone corrected you, instead of being like, "Oh, sorry," you should say, "Thanks for reminding me," and then correct yourself, because saying sorry puts the blame onto someone else, I guess, and they have the need to say, or like feel the pressure to say, "Oh no, it's fine, it's okay," which obviously it's not always. Really, it is really simple. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen recently is cis people putting their pronouns out there, you know, putting them in your social media bios, introducing yourself with pronouns. I think that's the easiest way to make non-cis people feel more comfortable.
I would just encourage people, you know, if you're like me, I'm a cis woman, but there's things you can do to help. You can educate yourself, you can follow people on social media who are trans and hear their stories. People like Monroe Bergdorf and India Moore, these sorts of people. It's helped me a lot to understand the complexity of it and the need for good allyship. It's important.
Yeah, I think talking's probably one of the best ways to make yourself a better ally.
I think that's one of the best things about like seeing non-trans people do things is when they've not done it because they know someone that's trans or because they've been asked to, because they want to, or because they want to know more and research things themselves, which I think is nice.
I also think one of the most important things you need to do is listen.
And just understand that not everyone's the same.
Ask the queer people in your life how you can be a better ally to them. That will help greatly. And just asking that question, how can I be a better ally? You're already being a better ally by asking that, you know?
I think people can just be a bit nicer to each other. This has been a really difficult year for everyone, and I think it's everyone's job just to make the world a bit of a better and a nicer place.